everybody, and welcome to episode 18 of the Bao Podcast, or the one and only Christmas special. Today we welcome someone very special, no one less than Axel van der Donk. Axel is my co-founder and CTO here at Bao Living. And for this month, we thought it would be fun to dedicate an episode to what we do here at Bao Living and our learnings of the past, 7 years at this point?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so I invited my partner in crime, Axel, to discuss these different points together on this episode. So let's dive directly into it. Welcome, Axel. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. As you know, podcast is not on top of my list of things to do. But I also thought it was a good idea. It's also crazy to hear that we're on episode 18 already.
Mm-hmm.
Insane.
It's been going now for, normally 18 months.
Nice.
Ever since Marty came up with the idea. Yeah, for the people listening, Marty or Martin is the intern who joined us a year and a half ago and who had the idea to start a podcast and who has been working on it ever since together with us. Anyway, yes, so we thought it would be fun to do a little bit more an episode about Bao Living itself. We have been talking with 17 different guests who are focused on sustainability and innovation in construction mostly. But we thought let's dive a bit deeper into what we do. And maybe a good point to start is I thought that we go back to the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we start there by explaining how we got to meet each other and how we started with the idea of Bao.
Sure. Should I start?
Go.
Okay.
Yeah, take it away.
When was it? So we met at AMS here in Antwerp.
The Antwerp Management School.
The School of Management of Antwerp. And there, I think that was the school year of 2014 to 2015. And in that year, we got the choice to do we did the course Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And in that year, we got the option to either do an in-company project in an existing company or write a business plan about a company that we would like to start. And those must have been the first couple of months of AMS. And I think you pitched the idea of building homes out of shipping containers.
Used shipping containers.
And seeing as I studied civil engineering, so actual civil and structural, so construction, I thought maybe that's something that I should go for.
Basically, I had an idea and no knowledge to get it realized.
Yes.
And you had a lot of knowledge to get it realized.
Okay, yeah. But if you asked me right now to design a bridge, I wouldn't be able to do it. Indeed. So you proposed the idea, and I think, I had a little bit of an interest in construction. An interest that kind of grew out of my studies as an engineer. And then we just decided to go for it along with one other person.
That's true.
Yeah, at the beginning we were with 3.
Even with 4.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Valerie and
Vito, I think.
Vito,
yes, indeed.
Schoolmate.
And then we scared them off.
Yeah. I think less than 4 weeks later, we were with the 2 of us.
I think they just had another project that they were more interested in, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's funny to note that in the first half year, we didn't really get along, you and I.
That's an understatement, one could say.
Indeed. But in the first half of the school year, I think. But I think it was mostly because we had no idea what we were doing or how to even start about how to start a business like this. But then I think, throughout that year, we got courses on how to fill in the business plan. And then it started, I think, in the second half of that year, it started to become clear. And then both of us had a little bit of a click in terms of how we were going to complete this business plan. And then from there, it seemed to go a little bit smoother than the first half of the year.
For sure. Yeah, I think if we can zoom out already a bit, I think one of the main elements that I'm taking away from our entrepreneurial journey till now is that it's an emotional roller coaster.
Mhm.
Like every single year again, like you have very high, you have highs and you have lows. And I think I already noticed it in, as you say, the first couple of months, because it seemed that quite quickly we realized, all right, it's environmentally, it makes sense to use old containers who are standing in the port of Antwerp, in the thousands apparently. It makes sense, you think, to use them again, but then we found out that it's actually not such a good idea.
Way too expensive to clean up, and to make a viable business out of it, or a scalable business.
Yeah, and especially in the Belgian weather.
Yeah. And then I think around that time we also switched over to CLT.
Yes.
So then I think via your father,
yes,
we got the idea of CLT, which is mass timber structure to make the homes that we were going to build. Basically still same container dimensions, but just out of wood. And that also in terms of the environmental positive impact side of things, it's also tick that box. So I think we decided to pivot to that. And that was the business plan that we had, I think. With CLT, modular homes, container size for transport. I think we have that business plan in the office.
Definitely, it's lying around somewhere.
It is there, yeah.
Of course, some great visuals.
And then what was it? It was called Tiny Homes at first, I think.
Tiny
Homes.
Yes, tiny homes.
And we were called Bauhaus back then as well. It's a different name. And then that changed over the years. But anyway, so we finished that year. That was in 2015, and then
with good marks.
Yes, positive end result.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so. That's kind of where the idea came from. But what it is now kind of came after. So the product that we have now, the SAM, as you can see to my right, your left, that only came really after we sat down with Studio Dot.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So at the end of school year, we had this business plan, and I think we had a sit down with Studio Dot, and they had a similar idea.
Maybe explain to the audience who Studio Dot is.
Studio Dot is a product design studio here in Antwerp.
A renowned product design studio,
Indeed.
you could say.
Yes, definitely. And I think that they had a similar idea, and we kind of merged what we wanted to do, like what we actually wanted to achieve in the construction sector. We merged it with a concept that they had lying around, and we kind of formed it into this company that it is now.
Mm-hmm.
That was 2015, and then I looked through these. I can't remember when I was making a presentation a couple of months ago, trying to figure out, like, because between the launch of the first showroom and the moment we started working with Studio Dot, it's still it's like 2.5 years.
Definitely.
That we tried to find sponsorship to get the first showroom made in that shop that you're
in Mol.
In Mol. And to find the initial sponsorship and then the initial funding, and that kind of led the first showroom that was made out of duct tape and cardboard.
Yeah, so basically we started brainstorming with Studio Dot. We came up with this idea of these wooden container-shaped houses.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's not that it wasn't a good idea. We just realized, if I remember correctly, that there were quite a lot of players in the Benelux market who already were doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And we could have started to compete with them, but from a mission perspective, we wanted to make construction more affordable and sustainable. That was very clear from the beginning. So it didn't really make a lot of sense to start to compete with players who are already doing it. And then indeed the pivot to the SAM, which was indeed very well guided by Studio Dot. Yeah, and then that first showroom, my God.
Yeah. Indeed, what you said. I think we decided to go more niche by working on SAM, by working on the utilities instead of the structure, and then I think half a year to a year after that we had the first showroom, and then the first meeting with Pro, which led to them ultimately partnering up with us, and then March 2018, April 2018, we did the first showroom. And that's kind of when I kind of consider the start of commercial activity from that point.
Yes, indeed. A little bit over 4.5 years, I would say, at this point.
Yes. Well, no. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait. Yes.
What would you say were like the
You're right.
biggest challenges in like how do you remember that phase from going to an idea to building it for the first time? Like, what were the biggest challenges that you remember?
I mean, as the biggest challenges. Well, I mean, it was we didn't have much funding, so the biggest challenges was paying the rent every month and trying not to. Basically, the first half year, it was like trying to make as little loss as possible, but it was always a loss. It was always it was losing money every month. But what I remember from that period,
maybe a fun story I remember as well from, as you said, those first couple of months. So we had no like investors yet. I mean, we needed to survive personally as well as make progress on the idea and the concept.
Mm-hmm.
And we needed to look for ways to earn some living. So I very much remember that moment when you walked, like, because we were co-housing.
Yeah.
And it was really harsh winter.
Yes.
And you were doing Deliveroo.
I was.
If I remember. So we worked from 9 to 6, and then you jumped on the bike at 7 and rode around town delivering food.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at one moment that you walked in with like double frozen hand how do you call
Gloves?
it? Gloves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gloves. Yeah, it was a really wet evening, and I had time between orders, so I put my gloves in the microwave to dry them up. And then I got another order and I had to go. But yeah, I did Deliveroo for a little bit of time because it's like it was a very good flexible job. I could honestly, basically, I could work whenever I wanted, earn some money. You're cycling around, so you're getting fit, and in between orders, you can read a book, or during order, you can even listen to a podcast. So there was never really much downtime during Deliveroo. I'm gonna try to make it as productive as possible, but I mean, it still wasn't enough to make it through the month. God. But it definitely helped. Definitely.
I do remember there were moments like that moment when you walked in and like you were frozen solid, and I was sitting in the kitchen eating something in the co-housing, and like you didn't say anything, and you threw in those gloves, and they started heating up, and you just turned around and you looked at me, and I remember like you like not saying anything, but basically saying like, "What the fuck are we doing? We studied 7 years, and now this." Or 6 years? Yeah. There were definitely some low points.
There were definitely some low points,
yeah.
But it all worked out in the end, it seemed. Well, it feels that way. But then in between the launch of the first showroom in 2018 and then, 2015 and 2018, we also got into the accelerator program from Climate Kick.
Yes.
And then we got our first wage.
Yes.
Which was like €800 a month.
Oh,
for 6 months, I think.
Beautiful.
And then it somewhat started to grow from there. Because I don't think once we got that, we wanted to go back to earning nothing.
My God. It was just so difficult, like working 9 to 6 on Bao, and then next to that, trying to get like, what was it, 600-700 euros a month just to pay rent and have something to eat. Like it
was fun though.
If you look back on it,
It's fun.
in the weekends, working on those construction sites and stuff. I don't know. I cursed a lot. Anyway, Climate Kick.
Yes,
big moment.
Climate Kick, which was an accelerator program from the EU, I think. And they invested in sustainable startups, or startups with a sustainable product or mission. And we had, I also look very fondly to those months or years, I guess we were there.
I think it was 18 months in total.
Because there was 3 stages, 1, 2, and 3, and we got through all 3. And with every stage, there was a little bit of funding that came out of it.
In the beginning, it was a little. Stage 3 was nice.
Yeah. We kind of lived from that, so we're very grateful for the people over there. And the people we met there is also made some friends that we are still in touch with.
It's basically like it was Expedition Robinson for startups. If I need to explain it to people now, it's like that's how it was.
It was, so every stage there was half of the group got what's the word? Exiled.
Got off. Basically banned from the program.
Didn't go through to the next stage is maybe the most diplomatic way of saying it. Honestly, I can't place it when exactly that 18 months was.
I think it was definitely before we launched commercially.
Are you sure? Because once they came to visit the new showroom.
They came to the showroom, right.
I think it must have been some overlap.
17 till 18 and a half, something.
I think so, yeah. I think that was it, yeah. And then that's like, I kind of see it as like a couple of chapters, you know? Mm-hmm. So there's like the chapters where we had nothing up to that first showroom. Right? Which is like the cardboard showroom. Mm-hmm. Everything leading up to that. And then you have like chapter 2, which is the blue showroom, the showroom in Van Op en Pro, and then they joined. Yeah. And then you have chapter 3, which started here 2 years ago. Wait, we've almost been here for 3 years. No, this is now from April last year. Right. Yes. But we've been renting this office. Yeah. Next year it'll be 3 years. Yes. And that's in what I call chapter 3. Right. Volume 3. Episode 3. Yes. Showroom 3. Yes. Yeah. Maybe you should explain what that first showroom looked like and what it was. So, like, the cabinets were white because that's just the most affordable cabinet you can get. And it was made together with Luma from Ole, indeed. I think. Mol. They sponsored it together with some other suppliers. They helped sponsor the first showroom. It looked, the walls were wood. They weren't white or heap rock walls that we have now. The furniture was cardboard furniture, so just boxes. With sheets over them. And the ceiling was plastic ceiling, and we actually tested the ventilation in the first one, funnily enough. And basically the design of that showroom became the design of the second one, but the second one was like a full-on apartment. Right. And people can see that apartment on our website. It's the first showroom, the blue Sam. And that was just like a fully furnished apartment. It just looked like an apartment, but it was in the warehouse of Van Op en Pro. So they had some space, and very grateful for the 2 years we were able to rent that space over there, because it was right next to the manufacturing, basically, and it was also a good place to host guests or have meetings. For me, that's something that, like, if I now talk with other like startups or new young innovative companies in the space, that's something for me that's like a really valuable lesson. Those showrooms, like I remember very vividly every time we launched
something physical.
Mm-hmm.
Like it gave a boost to the business.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for me a really like a very clear lesson is in construction. It doesn't matter because in the beginning we tried to like sell it based on a presentation, and we had like VR. We tried some Google Cardboards elements, but in the end, you're selling a really physical product to a market that's really used to seeing things
Mm-hmm.
in person and touching them and seeing the quality of finish. So yeah, for me that's something that I always like say to if someone else is just try to get something built. Like it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, it doesn't look terrible, but if you have something physical, it already removes a hurdle or a barrier in the mind of potential customers.
Yeah, definitely. Well, especially with us, because whichever way you look at it, we have a furniture system, but what is around that furniture system is an actual home. So people have to kind of get an idea of what an apartment looks like with a SAM unit. And yeah, I think when we first moved here to Deurne, there was a year where we had no showroom, and it was just having meetings via presentation, and then we got this built, and I think we felt the effects straight away, right?
Definitely. Yeah, again, COVID. Like,
yeah,
didn't matter if we would have had a showroom, people weren't allowed to come and see. So again, that was very difficult to sell something as big as physical as a SAM without being able to show it to people.
Yeah, it's crucial for sure. Yeah.
All right. So that's I think
that's a long story of how the idea of Bao Living came around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's like 7.5, 8 years of our lives.
Yeah. Like, looking back on it, what are the things you think we could have done to like make things go quicker? Maybe in the beginning?
Yes. Of course. So much. Yeah, we always laugh about the like not having a social media post ready by the end of the day. Yeah, there's a lot of yeah. I mean, that's for us, social media is not important. For other businesses, it's very important, but for us, construction sector, not at all. So we prioritize that a little bit too much, but I think that's because it was fun to do, right?
Plus, we didn't have the resources to like start building immediately. We were 25. We had nothing.
Well, I mean, yeah, we had no budget. So I think our intention was good because, yeah, we had no marketing budget. So we just wanted to have a presence online, and I think that's kind of how it starts. And then I think that all the social media that we had, and we had like a Facebook page before, obviously we had a website, and then it's kind of all like stepping stones. So, I mean, if we would do it again, it would probably happen much quicker. And yes. I think we would be able to know what to avoid. But, I mean, you can't blame us. You can't really blame us. We had no experience in... we basically started right after school, right? So we had no experience of working in a business or starting a business, not at all. Well, you had a little bit more experience starting a business than I did. I had no prior experience starting a business, nor did I ever think I would actually. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of stuff that we probably should have skipped or prioritized moved much lower on the priority list than what we did. But I mean, it's a really time-intensive thing that we were working on. I mean, we say we spent 8 years on it, but yeah, the first 2 was trying to find partners and building a showroom. It's not like you can't build it in a garage. You can't build it in the basement we had.
Developing the entire thing.
Yeah, that too, and that also took time. With Studio Dot, there was months that went there, and in the meantime, we try and find meetings. And
I remember the first prototype in the empty shop in Mol.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sometimes I look at the pictures of the sanitary piping that we placed in there ourselves, with like the guidance of a local plumber called Marek.
Yeah.
And they were like such idiot things like 6 lines, 6 lines of HVAC, of sanitary piping, which, like, looking back on it, like, no, that's one continuous line.
Well, no, not really. I mean, at first we thought that was the way to go.
Yes.
And then we switched to doing everything in serie.
Yes.
But now most of the time we work with collectors, and then it is back to what it was.
Okay.
But it's just an evolved form.
Mm-hmm.
But it is, I think, standard practice to try and have a pipe per appliance, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong.
Do you think you need to be like a little bit like young and naive to start something like this?
I don't know.
Like, do you think if we would like have started a regular professional career in, let's say, Deloitte, without like focusing on, but let's say Deloitte, like if we would have worked at Deloitte for 5 years and then would have done this, do you think it would have helped us, or it would have, like, we would have just never have started because you realize, like, what the hell, what you trying to do? You have no money, you're 20 something years old, like, the construction industry is so complex and capital intensive, and like, yeah.
I honestly think it on the whole, it would have been a net positive result had we had some experience in the beginning.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. I think, as I said, there's lots of stuff that we spent time on that just didn't make sense. And that's things you learn in your first work experience, learn to prioritize and manage your time. And I think there are certain levels of formality and professionalizing processes that is something that you pick up at a job, and something we had no idea how to do in the beginning. So I mean, it works in both ways, kind of thing. I think there's risks that we took that we could take because we just left school. I think had we had a job, money would have been a bit less of an issue. We probably would have saved a little bit more money had we worked for 3 years before starting this.
Mm-hmm.
And we would have. But I think it's probably the jump to actually do it is harder.
That's my point.
Yeah, I think you're in a certain. You've been there for 3-4 years. You're comfortable. I think the barrier to do it will definitely be higher.
Yes.
Sure.
So, yeah, sometimes we get invited to give like lectures in schools, right?
Yes.
And when students then ask me, like, should I first work somewhere else or do it immediately? I always answer, like, and I'm conflicted. I fully agree with your position about if we would have had some experience somewhere else, we probably would have been able to do it more efficient in the beginning. But I always say to them, no, just go. Because let's say you do the study trajectory that we've done, you graduate around 24, 25. Then if you go and do the work for a couple of years, I always think you're a little bit in like golden handcuffs. Like it's so difficult to like leave that behind and go back to like the like hustle grinding thing that we did in the beginning. And I don't like the word hustle, but it's such a overused, silly thing.
No, definitely the step to do it would have, because for me the when we left school and we decided to do this, for me the choice was, it seemed like let's try it. It was like that kind of went through my mind. Like, I mean, I had been looking around for work and I did some interviews. But I mean, it probably would have been the choice to do it was helped through the interest that Peter showed right from the beginning.
Definitely.
Because he did express interest to even step into the company right at the beginning, and that recognition next to how positive the business plan was received at school was really like, okay, maybe we should just try it. And I think we said, let's try it for a year or let's try it for half a year. I don't know. But it did. And I look back at that moment quite often, actually, the very decision to go and do it, because obviously there were down moments, like you mentioned. And you're like, why the F did I decide to do this? And I forgot the point I was going to make.
For me, it's unless you come. But what I also remember back from like the moment of thinking about starting it is like my environment. It's a bit different with me because my dad was like, yeah, go do it. Like he's not like, oh my God, what are you doing? Yeah. My mom was a bit more like that, but then the rest of my family, they were like, yeah, but you just studied for like 6-7 years. Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, go get that like consultancy job and it's so, yes, that's the point I was wanting to make. Like, they always said like, oh my God, it's so risky. It's so risky. What are you doing? That's a very Belgian thing. I remember that like a lot of
everywhere.
Yeah, probably. Although I don't know.
It is a risky thing.
Yeah, it's
not what's the word? It's unconventional.
It's unconventional, but it's not risky because I remember sitting on a bus or a train back from Mol to Antwerp, and I was thinking like, okay, everyone says it's risky. Okay, so what's the actual risk? I'm not gonna like. It came down to like, if I was thinking about what's the biggest risk, it's basically losing 1 year, because we said we were going to give us 1 year. It's losing 1 year of wage, which was netto 20,000 euros, best case. So that's the best. I mean, like thinking from it back then, from like first principles, like what's the actual risk? That's the best I could come up with, and that's like. Yeah. That's not like people made it seem out like, oh my God, you're gambling your future away. And I was, no.
Did people say that to you? In those words?
No, but they did say like, yeah, like, oh, it's so risky. Like, what are you doing? And
I don't remember. Because I think my father was already helping during the AMS part, because he was running a startup at the time, I think. Yeah, he was. So he had interest and he had experience. And I think he never, I think he asked me to really think about it, but he'd never tried to turn me away from the idea. He very much, I remember saying like, yeah, I'm going to try it. And then he was like, okay, then you try it. But I didn't really get any resistance or like, you're gambling your life away, that kind of thing. And I don't really remember if my mother said anything about it. Yeah.
I think that's a big difference though. I think we can be really, there's a lot of things we can be grateful about, and people and organizations we should thank, and I mean, we should be very appreciative of. We mentioned a couple of them already, like Studio Dot and the accelerator programs and Van Open Pro, but also I think as you mentioned, like the perspective of like your parents who support you in that decision.
Yeah.
Crucial, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. Especially maybe even the dads even more than the mothers. Like saying like, okay, it's a risk. But we appreciate the risk and the effort you're gonna do it. I mean, I think that makes a difference for sure.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway, so that's the humble beginnings. Now I think you could say we are starting to get to a point of scaling, right?
Yes.
Especially with some recent developments that we are not yet in the opportunity to say more about, but which will come in the near future. I think we're getting to a point that there is going to be some quick growth. And if you look at the sector as a whole, after trying to like launch something new and innovative like this throughout the last couple of years, like, have there been some specific things that you really learned?
Patience. Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day. I was asked the question, like, what's your word of the year kind of thing? And it's patience, but it's understandable. I think at the beginning we're like, why does everything take so fucking long? You know? We're like, why do they take so long to decide? But it's all like, time frames, you know? It's a building is meant to stay there for as long as possible. A house, you want to live in there for 10, 20, 30 years. So obviously the decision time takes a while. But I think, what I definitely learned, definitely in the last 2 years, is just the patience. Because just the very nature of what sales is like in our business is you have your first contact with someone, and by the time you're talking about a project, it might be half a year to a year later, and then if you do get the chance to draw something out and they like it and they want to move forward, then it could even take another 2-3 years before we actually get to build it. So, I mean, that's also a challenge that we've had in the company, just also in terms of, our own motivation and motivation with the team, that the wins are so far apart. But yeah, definitely patience. It definitely took, I thought when we started this, we would be much further than like where we are right now. But just based on the fact that we completely underestimated just how long the decisions are made within these companies. I think some of the pilot projects we did in the beginning were quicker to be decided because it's just 1 unit or 2 units. But yeah, now we're entering into the 20, 30, 40 unit projects, and I think patience will still be the golden rule. I think we're still you sign projects that are going to be built in 3 or 4 years at times.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really valid point. Although what I have tried to learn myself is going through this process, I think it's also a Bill Gates quote. You overestimate what you can do in a year, but you underestimate what you can do in 10 years. And if you would look at like us, basically we're working on it for a decade in 2025, right? Which is still 3 more years.
Yes.
Looking at certain projects that are on the horizon, like it will be the case that in a decade we came from an idea as 24-year-old students to implementing said idea in like really big projects in Brussels, for example.
Yeah.
Like, and
if you put it into that kind of perspective, and also I think there were times where we sit together at the end of the year and we try and list up everything that we have done in that year. You also get, it's also surprising how much you actually also get, how much actually gets done in the year. But yeah, if you definitely put it into perspective, if you've been working on it for 10 years, then. But it's always harder when you're in it. You know? It's like fun to see when other people are like, wow, what you did on 3 years is crazy. But then when you're in it, you're like,
let's move. Yeah. Like it's now getting to a point that sometimes people come here who work in the first showroom, and then I walk them through the sales pitch, and they're like, whoa, what, you guys did a lot in 3 years. And then I'm always like, really?
You know what? You're right.
Are you really? And, okay, thank you. Yeah. So there's definitely a zoom out thing that works.
Yes,
or that helps.
It definitely helps.
Yeah,
you should do it again.
From my perspective, also something that I learned in the last 4 to 5 years in commercializing this is I think if I would need to give it a name, it's like follow the yes but.
The yes but?
Yes, the yes but.
Okay.
So I think something that was advised to us from the very early beginnings by a very well, highly valued team of our advisory board called Kurt de Mong, right? So someone who we still are in contact with. I very clearly remember him like saying, you need to always get in touch with the market. Like you have the tendency, startups have the tendency to like develop until they think they get to a point where it's like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah. Startup myopia.
Yes.
That's how we learned it in AMS, I think.
Yes, indeed. And I think something that he told us from the very beginning, and I think that if we can put some like feathers on our cap, is that that's something we didn't do.
Feathers on your cap.
Isn't that something you say?
I don't know. I've never heard it before.
Yeah,
I like it.
You're the half-bred. Anyway, I think that's something you say. I don't know.
Okay.
And then we went, like we always looked for like the touch in the market. Like, is this right? So, and then they always used to say, I remember because I did most of these meetings, like they would say, oh yeah, that's amazing. But... And in the beginning it was, oh yeah, this makes a lot of sense, but we're not going to buy it based on a presentation from a 25-year-old who has not worked even 6 months in construction. So then, okay, damn, let's try to build the first possible thing we can do with basically no revenue, like the crappy showroom, 0.1 you could say. And then we built that showroom, and then they came and they looked around and they say, oh yeah, it looks very well, amazing, well done, guys. But it's a showroom. You haven't done it in real life. If you do it in real life on a construction site, you will learn a lot, and then maybe we will start looking into. And every single time we needed to take away the yes but, and then we did the first smaller ones, right? The first couple of years, and then they came to there, and then they said, "Oh yeah, amazing, well done, guys, looks great." But it's a small project, so and then we did like the bigger one, and then follow the yes but. The yes but. I think that's an important insight that I learned anyway.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think, but there's always, that's like a milestone, right? Like that's the yes but is really what the customers see is risk.
Yes.
Basically, the yes but in my eyes is a milestone, and a milestone is there because it's a very clear. It's not particularly a deadline, but it's a very clear point where you have de-risked your company significantly.
Yes.
And I think with the product, milestones have been that first showroom, the second showroom. I think also Van Op and Pro joining the party is a milestone because it lowers the risk of people talking to us and thinking about doing a project with us. So I think it's always in terms of lowering or taking away that risk.
For sure.
And I think now, with the bigger projects that we're looking at now, they look at what we realized in Brussels with the 20 units together with Urbicon. And that for them is like, okay, this team of, on average, 4 people have done it 20 times. Yeah, maybe they're up to doing it for 30, 40 apartments or 50. And I think it's probably a golden rule in I don't know how it works with software.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I think it's one of the main differences between software and hardware, especially, and then you have like hardware, which is, I don't know, something small and non-expensive. But I think basically what I'm trying to say is I think one of the reasons why innovation in construction is so slow is because with every risk, I mean, there's no small way of taking a real risk. You do it, the smallest scale you can do it is one single apartment or home which is a couple €100,000
Mm-hmm.
to take the risk on. And it's not like the entire apartment will explode, but like reworking it or needing to find another contractor if it doesn't, like, it is a risk. It's a financial big risk. There's no like small financial risks to take, or the margin. Yeah. I don't know if I.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Well, we're just talking about larger sums of money per realization.
Yes.
It's obviously a bigger decision for people to do it or not. It's like buying say the choice between buying a PlayStation 5 and buying a house. It's different. A house you're gonna go into, you're gonna have to probably get a loan, and it's you spend more time thinking about it.
Is it a personal case?
No,
Personal
it has nothing to do with any personal things. That's why it's been quite tricky, because it is such a large risk.
Yeah.
To not only purchase a SAM with a small and inexperienced team back then, but even now, if we hadn't have done Urbicon, where we did it 20 times, which is very much at a significant scale, and then the bigger fish might not have even considered that. Yes,
for sure. I think that's also one person we should definitely maybe highlight in this story. Bart Wouters from Urbicon, technical director. I don't know if he's going to listen to us. Maybe we should tag everyone who we want to specifically thank.
Are there show notes?
Yes, there are show notes. We should,
right.
Yes. Marty, if you hear this, all these organizations, put them in the show notes. Anyway, yes. But Bart Wouters, I think, is a really, very important person in this story up to now, because he took a risk. He
took a big risk, yeah. And definitely.
And that's also sorry, what do you want to say?
No, I'm just trying to put it into perspective for the listeners of when they actually decided to move forward with us was before. You're better with.
Yes, so we met him in December 18.
Yes,
we were building our first commercial realization.
Like one unit,
one single home.
He and Urbicon obviously were considering to move forward with us to do 20. So, as you mentioned, very grateful for the risk that they took there.
And that's also, I think, no matter how you well strategize and how you do all the right things, sometimes you also just need to have a bit of luck.
Yeah.
I think the baseline, or it's business as usual as it if it doesn't go how you want it to go. I think that's how I look at it at this point. It's okay, it didn't go or it didn't work out, but that we're used to that.
But that's kind of you can say that luck plays a very big part of it, but I'm a very firm believer that you create your own luck. And I think you have to try and maximize the amounts of points or moments where luck can play a part. And then,
for sure.
And then there will be a higher chance of luck.
Next time around.
Of luck, of hitting, what's the word? I can't remember.
The bullseye. I don't know.
Bullseye.
That's something that really motivates me when I'm going through the 1100th lead. I'm just saying something in year 5 of doing that. It's just keeping in mind just every single one that you reach out is improving indeed that statistical formula of a higher chance of success, basically. All right, so we had the beginning, we had some learnings. Mm-hmm. Maybe we could look a little bit into the future.
Sure.
This is not at all like an episode about us finishing or closing this story. I think it's just maybe a part one of many parts to come. But like if you look at the near and far future of Bao Living, like what do your eyes see?
What do my
What do you
see?
Well, yes.
It's always very hard because planning 5 years in advance is basically impossible. I think we say this every year, but next year is going to be bigger than the last.
Unless there are no global pandemics or financial meltdowns.
That's true.
Yes, we could say
that year was probably less big than the one before.
Yes,
but I'm sure that we weren't the only business to succumb to that. But yeah, it really feels like that if certain things go our way, that we can take the business to a point where we do have more room for hiring. We do have more room for working on aspects that are now pushed a little bit lower down on the priority list. Further product development to move the product even faster forward, because right now the focus very much is on sales and drawing in new projects. But next year, I think there are certain projects out there where there's a very good chance that they could go our way.
Do you see like trends on a macro level? For example, I think from the very beginning it has been our goal to make construction more affordable and sustainable, which I think the second part, the sustainability, was more our intrinsic motivator. After being active in the industry for, let's say, 8 years, of which 4.5 commercially, I think the thing that we are learning, or we learned quite quickly, is that that's all good and well, the sustainability aspect, of which it is built in. Like it is more circular to install a SAM than to do it traditionally. But the frameworks that are in place today, or from a legal perspective, don't really count those as financial benefits.
No, yeah. I mean, it's going in the right direction,
yes.
It seems. It feels like, and we've been in the sector for, I think we've been in there for 6 years, something like that, even before the first showroom. Before that, we were also still very much working and getting in touch with people. And it seems like the focus on building more sustainably, in a more circular way, moving more towards standardization. It seems like it's really picking up speed. But as you said, it doesn't seem like there are financial incentives right now in place that will really encourage companies other than the sustainable builders that do it out of their own motivation, because they believe that that's necessary, to really encourage, and that's the majority of the other businesses, to really focus more on building sustainably. However, from what I understand.
Yes. However, I do think, and that's maybe the point that we should focus on, is like that I think change is coming now and quite quickly. For example, that European taxonomy legislation. I think there it's not going to be a law, as what I understand from now. I mean, what I understand from it now, it's not going to be like a European law, but they are going to like indirectly make it somewhat of a law, because if you don't follow the stricter legislation that's being written out and communicated as we speak, the interests of your loans will be higher as a developer for your set building that you wanted to develop?
Yeah. I guess that'll
So
push it in the right direction.
yes, I think that's definitely gonna be a wind in our sails. Yes.
For sure.
Also, rising costs for materials, like less people available for the sites themselves, everything leading more toward prefabrication. Yeah. I do feel like maybe we were a bit early with this entire concept.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly. And maybe not in the right, because it seems like in Holland they are, or in the Netherlands they are a couple of years ahead of us.
Yes.
Especially on the standardization front and the building prefab. Seems like we've picked a difficult market to start with.
Yeah. If it works here, though, it's probably going to be easier to do it in other markets, I think.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Let's hope.
Indeed. Yeah. Okay, I see we've been going at it for quite a while, so let's see.
The podcast, you mean?
Yes.
It's been an hour, I think.
56 minutes. And it's a Friday evening, December the 23rd. 23rd. That's a difficult word for me to say, apparently. So let's maybe do a couple, like 1 or 2, 3 quick ones to round it off. Do you have any preferences? I don't know if you prepared any of the personal questions, Axel.
The personal ones are all the way at the bottom, right?
Yes. Okay. Any of the other ones? I don't know if you had a preference.
I mean, we covered the construction industry. I think if there's one thing what I would change in the construction industry is basically what we're trying to do. There's a lot of waste being produced just because the focus is on building affordably, and the more affordable materials are being chosen, and they are not exactly the materials that have the highest residual value at the end of the cycle, and that the destruction of existing buildings contributes hugely to the actual total waste that is being generated. And I really think that it's very clear if what we're trying to do, that the whole building as material banks concept is I find it very beautiful in its simplicity, and just the way that it's the wording, just the fact that a building is a temporary store of the materials that you put into it. It makes so much sense to me in my head that I can't believe that it will not be the way things happen further down the line.
Well put.
But obviously, we haven't the negative impacts of the massive growth that has happened in the last year on the construction front and everywhere, really. The impacts of those are really catching up to us now, and it's now that we're kind of waking up to the negative impacts of this and all the climate change that is happening. So I do think that people are realizing. On that front, I'm somewhat pessimistic that I think it's a huge challenge, as we say that it's the next between now and 2050, we have to realize the biggest construction sprint known to man, really. Is it gonna happen perfectly and smoothly? Probably not.
Does it ever?
Does it ever? That's true. It doesn't really ever go smoothly.
All right, great. I think we could leave it there, or we could leave on a lighting note.
Sure.
Yeah. One could say you are a man of culture, right?
Is that so? Okay.
Yeah, you read some.
I read.
You watch.
I read.
You watch some. You watch some.
I watch.
You
and I
watch
read.
and you read. So, any like recommendations for the audience that they could listen to?
Books wise.
Books, movies, games.
Well, I yesterday I finished my 9th book of the year.
Well, look at you.
Look at me.
Congratulations.
I used to not read that much at all, and I've really built a habit of reading, which I'm quite happy with. And one of the books that this is one of the answers that I did prepare.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wrote down 2 books. The 2 favorite books of the year. One was The Changing World Order from Ray Dalio.
Did you go to?
Yeah, I finished the whole. I think it was
Wow.
really fascinating. I'm becoming a little bit of a history nerd, and I really a couple of years ago I learned the fact that the British Empire was the very biggest of empires that the world has ever known, and I was always fascinated about how the leading world order kind of switches every couple of generations, and that whole idea of the Dutch Empire being the main world order before the British Empire. The idea always fascinated me when I learned that, and then I saw that Ray Dalio wrote a book about it, and just the way he explains how it all comes to be and how there are patterns that emerge during the current empire's reign, and what leads to the downfall of these empires, and what happens when one empire is on its way down and another is on its way up. I thought it was a very, very fascinating book. I highly recommend it to. I mean, it gets a little bit technical on the economic front. There are chapters where there are a lot of concepts that I just didn't understand. I'll admit to that wholeheartedly. But there's a lot of history in there as well, especially about the Dutch Empire, which I find very interesting. And then also with the current American Empire, and then now what's happening with America and China. There's a lot of parallels between the switching of empires in the last 500 years, which is kind of coming back now between China and America, which is very interesting.
Yeah, it has been on my nightstand for many
It's
moons.
a fat book.
It's a thick book.
It's quite a read.
Yeah, and the thing also with Dalio, I think, is when he launches something like this, he does all the big podcasts.
Yes.
And then I'm always like, ooh, Dalio. And I listen to all the podcasts, and then I've listened to like 8 hours of him explaining the book. And then I'm like, yeah. Like,
why should I read it?
Should I spend another 10, 15? But I find it really fascinating that I think he launched it end of last year, I would say. October, November 21.
Yes.
And the main point that I very clearly remember him like verbalizing when he was on the podcast tour is like, yeah, there's a high chance there's going to be armed conflict in the West in this decade, and probably sooner than later. I still remember and him saying that, and I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, maybe, whoa, edgy.
Yeah.
And then like 4 months later, Russia invaded the Ukraine, and I was like, whoa, did that dude just like, did he call it?
It's fascinating, but it's without going too much into it. Yeah, it gives you a very clear story and idea of basically how the world works a little bit.
From a macro perspective.
From a very, very macro perspective. And if you're interested in a little bit of history, it basically tells the story of each of the leading empire, from the Dutch to the British to the American now. I really enjoyed it. It was a bit, there was moments where it was a little bit dry in the beginning, but on the whole, I enjoyed it. And a second book that I also highly recommend is River of the Gods. Yes.
This is new to me.
I really enjoyed it. It's like 250, 300 pages. It's about the story of a British expedition that went to try and find the source of the Nile.
Ooh.
Very interesting. It's basically at the end of the 19th century. Yeah, like two or three expeditions of people that went to Africa, and they went up the Nile, and they spent 6 to 9 months walking to try and find where the source of the Nile is. And it's a really crazy how the book is written, because it's somewhat written as like it's got a narrative, so it's very much, it's a very clear story, but it's just all based on records and on letters that the guys wrote and stories that they have found about these men that risked their lives trying to map out where the Nile ends. And it's crazy, just
Starts.
Yeah, where it starts.
Right, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Very interesting.
Where does the Nile start?
Well, you have to read it and find out.
All right. Unless there was anything else you wanted to share in this first edition to our audience, I think we can close it right here.
Yes. Sure.
I
Thanks.
think there are worse ways to start the holiday, right?
That's true. Thanks for having me on the Bao Podcast.
Long overdue, man.
Yeah,
It was
true.
kind of a
It's fun.
struggle to get you on here.
Hey. Hey. How many times you asked?
I think I asked you once in the beginning.
Okay.
And you were like,
I mean,
and I'm quoting here.
Okay, that's a direct quote.
Yes.
No, but let's do it again next year. Sure.
Yes.
We should
I
do it
think,
again. We should do it again sometime.
yes, it's like good recap of the year.
Yes.
All right, dearest Bao Podcast listeners, if you listen to this point, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
We appreciate it. I hope we entertained you a bit with our little story, and you maybe also learned something. And yes, I think that's a close. We're gonna wrap it here for the podcast in 2022, and we already have 2 new guests planned for next year. And it are some fun ones. So definitely, keep listening. And if you enjoy this, by the way, I don't think I have ever done this, but this is a more like normal, like casual conversation. So if you listen to this up to this point, and you don't follow us yet on the different podcasting programs, definitely give it a follow so you can see those sweet episodes in your sweet timeline, and ratings or reviews are very much appreciated. All right, that's it. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful end of year, and we talk again next year. Thanks for listening to the Bao Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe to our channel. If you're interested in Bao Living in our Smart Adaptable Module or SAM, go check out our website baoliving.com. If you want to stay up to date, you can best subscribe to our monthly newsletter on our website or follow us on all social media platforms where we're named @Bao Living.